Welcome back to another episode of Money Talks with Dad.
Episode 6.
That's crazy. We've already done a 6
Yeah,
episodes.
2025.
Yeah. Is this will be like released in 20? Oh.
Well, it is 2025.
We're gonna
We know
release
you're
it this
math
year, right?
challenged. But yeah, it is.
It's really cool, Dad. It's really cool that
See
I
how
did
it works.
that.
We're not going to wait till 2026.
All right, fine. We'll
just
release
say.
it this year.
Yep. So, but hopefully timeless information.
Yes.
For that. And we were talking like at the end of episode 5, we're like, we have so many more topics.
Yeah.
Anissa had given us like 15 and none of
Yeah.
us wrote them down.
No, we didn't.
So Anissa, if you're listening, we need that list again.
Please.
And then we also wanted to start getting more feedback from people of what topics they would want to talk about. So there's a link in when we post this that they can ask a question privately, so their name's not out there.
Yeah.
But one thing we've noticed is while we're not getting a lot of comments on YouTube, we are starting to pick up in views. So episode 1, I don't know how many views we had, but not that many.
No.
But it's gone up and up each time. But we're guessing people don't have 6 or 7 hours to go back and rewatch every episode.
Yeah.
And then Courtney's been putting them on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. Hopefully when this airs, we'll still have TikTok because I think it's going to be banned,
Womp
allegedly.
womp.
But we get way more comments on those short, 90-second clips.
Yeah.
And then sometimes those comments, I'll reply and say, well, go back to episode 2 and watch all 55 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one, and I don't remember what social media it was on, but episode 5, when we were talking about debt,
Oh, right.
it was...
It was a comment, and it was basically just saying, like, I'm already deeply in debt, or what do I do if I'm already in debt? Something like that, right?
And that's basically, that was the gist of it. And somebody... We got a lot of... I think the debt one was the most commented on of all of the ones we posted on TikTok. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was, well, thanks, guys. I'm so deep in debt now. Now, we did in episode 5 give a short version of how you would get out of debt.
Yeah.
But obviously, we didn't go into detail. And so what I thought, it was way too hard to reply to this person because it'd be like 12 or 14 paragraphs of this is all the things you need to do. Mm-hmm. So I thought since we've gone 5 episodes in, maybe we'd take this chance to give our recap of episodes 1 through 5 and say, if somebody were to come to us at church and say, guys, I love your videos, but I have so much debt. What do I do?
Right. Yeah.
So is
like
that
what we would do? I think, yeah.
Does that sound like a good...
Let's kind of recap. Like, let's just that way if we get any other comments, just be like, actually go watch episode 6.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can shorten it down. And then I actually used AI to give us episode recaps just so I have notes of what we talked about in each one. Because like I said, that's probably 6.5 hours of content.
It is, yeah.
Already.
Let's hope it's accurate.
There was some things it took me like 4 tries of AI to get it right. Because it was already giving us episode 6 synopsis. I'm like, are they reading the future or what? But anyways, I actually, as I thought about answering this question of what would I do, and the first thing, and I said this to some of the people in the TikTok comments as well, was we actually need to first start and look at why do you have so much debt? Now, obviously, we've talked about before, it could be a medical issue. It could be just a catastrophic family emergency that happened. We've had, in our families, cancer and deaths and things that, like, if you're not prepared for, like, cancer bankrupts most people because even your deductible is so high that if you get good treatment, you're not going to have much. So we're obviously, that's not the reason. But this person, as far as we know, is not that. Just from what we've watched lifestyle wise, and this is what gets most of us. It got me, and then we talked about that in episode 5. Like, you start giving me credit cards when I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, cool, I can go to Target and furnish my dorm.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then all of a sudden the bill comes and it's like, you owe $75. I'm like, well, I don't have $75.
You furnished your whole dorm with $75?
No, that was my minimum payment.
Oh, okay.
I maxed out that. Okay, so this was 1993.
Good year. Well,
almost a good year.
Leading up to a good year.
Yes. So I don't know what inflation adjusted, but I decked out my dorm, not an apartment, 1-bedroom dorm, for all $500 on that Discover card.
Whew.
And then I got the bill and it was $75 a month, and it was just adding interest. And anyways,
Yeah.
so my issue there, and what a lot of younger people now, even younger being 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s that we deal with on a daily basis here at our company is it comes back down to your relationship with money.
Okay.
And that was actually episode 3.
Was it 3? Yeah.
Yeah. So if we were to go back and flip it, I would probably say let's start with our relationship with money, because we don't want to just jump into budgeting until we understand things. So one of the things we did in episode 3 was needs versus wants.
Oh, right.
And remember Dave Ramsey, he gives...
Yeah.
We got a lot of feedback when we bashed Dave Ramsey, so-called. But, I said, we're not all about beans and rice and beans, like he likes to say. And, and somebody commented, they said, well, that's actually a metaphor.
Oh,
so,
okay. Well, I mean, yeah, but the metaphor itself is still problematic.
It is and it isn't, because remember, so let's go through, what do we think needs were?
Coffee.
And, well, yes, coffee, but does it need to be Starbucks?
No.
At $6, or could we maybe buy grounds from Dunkin'?
Yeah.
Or if you like acidic coffee, Starbucks.
Yes. But no, food, shelter, clothing.
Yeah, food, shelter, clothing. And yes, you could do coffee, but maybe you're a lot of people need coffee.
Yeah.
But there's ways that you can scale it down. And I just remember, gosh, we're what, 5 years from the pandemic?
Wow.
When everything shut down. And like we were doing back then, we were curing people. And me personally, I was like, I'd see how much your mom would spend on K-cups, and I'm like,
yeah, it's problematic.
Yeah, problematic, but it was so convenient.
No, it really is.
But then COVID happened and everybody panicked, and there was no K-cups anymore anywhere, or at least the Dunkin' ones that we liked were gone. And so then we started doing the little filters in our Keurig, and we're like, well, we can just buy the Dunkin's grounds and do that. And, so on and so forth. But we were probably just by that saving, $15-20 a month.
Yeah, probably.
Which, if you're trying to come up with a $75 minimum payment on a credit card, that's a lot of money.
That's helpful, yeah.
So we took care of our need, in our mind's need, of coffee, but we did it in a cheaper way.
Right.
And so this person coming saying, well, that's a metaphor. I think the point is, obviously, technically, nutritionally, you can survive on rice and beans and rice.
Yeah.
But I don't know if your children would be okay with that.
No,
or
your
you.
Children will. I'm like, yeah, for sure. Just my
or
children
me.
would be happy with it. No, yeah. I think emotionally, beans and rice and beans is simply not a vibe.
Yeah. And actually, in this, we're not going to do like any, I'm not even going to talk about politics, but.
You're going to talk about what?
This is not political. This is just something that, Eventide, who's actually one of our mutual funds that we use in our paid job, which is investment management, they talk a lot about welfare and how actually globally our problem is not that that people are starving. It's that people on low incomes are now obese because unfortunately healthy foods are more expensive than the processed foods.
Right.
So like going back
so
to college
cheaper.
days,
Yeah.
I don't know how y'all eat ramen. There's so much sodium in there, but I know all my roommates survived on ramen.
Yeah.
Well, I survived on Kraft mac and cheese that before Easy Mac back in the olden days, you could actually make mac and cheese in there. So that was my kind of rice and beans and rice.
Yeah.
I also talked about, I think one of the episodes, Helper. It wasn't Hamburger Helper. Or Chicken Helper.
Helper was a staple. I remember it.
So it's we're saying have variety, but need, obviously your first need. How do I provide food? And what we learned again during the pandemic, which I think this was eye opening to us, because we'd gotten past the living the paycheck to paycheck like we did most of the 90s and early 2000s.
Right.
But we were eating out way too much with soccer and just being busy. When all of a sudden we couldn't eat out, we're like, look how much money is left over at the end of the month.
Right. Yeah.
Like we rolled eating out into our food budget.
Yeah.
And we're like, holy cow.
We have an excessive amount of leftover money here.
And, it's need as food, but I know people might bash us, including Courtney's husband, but Chick-fil-A is not a need if you're on a tight budget.
Sorry, Chandler.
Yeah. So it was funny. Courtney shared in our family group chat about, actually, I think Ryan shared it with us.
Yep.
That the conversation they had about him going to stop at Chick-fil-A, and her first conversation was what?
She's like, didn't you
already have breakfast? And then
he's like, well, I'm
I thought
hungry.
you said we were saving money.
Yep.
And I thought you said you didn't want to eat out because the norovirus is going around and we
Right.
have a newborn baby. And
Yep.
and he was like, oh, it's the Lord's chicken. Like, so a need is food.
Yeah.
If you're on a tight budget and you're deeply in debt,
Mm-hmm.
you can't eat out.
No. Yeah. It's so expensive.
You got to find ways to make food at home.
Yeah.
Meal prepping, you'll figure that out.
Yep.
Like you said, food, cut it down.
Yeah.
And then clothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of thrift stores.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thrift stores.
The Walmart $5 shirt pile.
Yep.
It's
TJ Maxx. You've got Marshalls, Ross.
Yeah.
All of those other places.
Yeah. So, obviously we're not saying wear the same outfit every day.
No.
But there are ways. You don't need to have name brands. And
Yeah. Well, and at some of those stores you can get name brands for like a sweet deal.
yeah, TJ Maxx and Ross and that's but even that can be expensive.
It can be.
But there was times where we bought all the kids' clothes. Back then it was like the $3 table
Yeah.
at Walmart or Target, and it was like, all right, 5 colors for you. Here you go.
Yep.
Here's your leggings. There is like 7 outfits for $50 or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be name brand. So clothing, there's ways. There's thrift stores. All sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then shelter.
Yeah.
That we know, and that was some of the comments. People were like, "Well, you're out of touch because have you ever tried to rent?" Well, we have kids ranging from 30 to 18.
Yeah.
And we're looking at rent and we're looking at mortgages.
It's
and
rough, man.
Yeah, but like, we told your brothers who are now 18.
Yep.
We don't mind you living at home. We understand.
Mm-hmm.
If you move out, you might need 5 roommates and a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, it makes me think about when Dustin was just out of school and stuff. He had what they called it the guy's house, I think, at the church. And it was, I think, the oldest of all the guys. He like bought the house, or the house was in his name or something like that. But then there were 5, 6, 7, I don't even know how many guys. Too many, in my opinion. Yeah. That's a lot of boys to live together. And that's what it was. But they all ended up paying rent. And so it was a very good deal. And they liked it because then they're all friends with one another, and it was actually really good.
Yeah.
It was a good time for them.
Yep.
So yeah, I know that rent is expensive, but like you can even find a way to rent cheaply.
Yeah.
And staying home with your parents is not what's the word I'm looking for? If it's not like a safe option or a
viable, maybe your job
right.
is, an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
Or your school or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But going back to all this, and I don't know how much we covered it in episode 3, but it comes down to our idea of what is needed, kind of our heart.
Yeah.
And that's what we keep, we've shared stories throughout the 5 episodes of the different childhood you and your older 3 siblings had versus your brothers who were born just as our company was taking off.
Yep.
And so they didn't, you guys suffered through, you suffered through what, 7 or 8 years of that struggle.
Yeah.
And then, we took off finally.
Yeah.
And we're blessed by it, and we don't take it for granted, but they haven't had to live through the helper days.
Right.
Or, hey guys, we're having pancakes for dinner. Yay, breakfast. Like getting excited about it. And me and mom are going, pancakes
Another
again.
day of pancakes.
Yeah. But we've had to talk to them now as they are adults and they're graduating this year of, you're going to have to lower your standards.
Yes.
You're going to have to be accepting of a roommate, accepting of living somewhere not so nice.
Yeah.
Maybe not driving a fancy car, because when you're paying for stuff yourself,
yep.
guess what?
Girl, it's hard out there.
Yeah, and so we've tried throughout their life to be like, this isn't going to be your standard when you move out. Like, and then that's why one of them's like, I'll just live here till I'm 25. Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, we're lucky enough that we can provide that, but the standards have to be reduced. So the standards on what food you eat, you don't need to eat out. The standard on what clothes, you can shop at Walmart or thrift stores or Ross, or you can lower that. It doesn't have to be
the outlet mall. It doesn't have to be. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about you.
I thought you saw my new Timbs.
I do like your new shoes.
But my other ones lasted 7 years, so
they were
starting to fall apart.
And this is spending a lot of money, but for a good reason, right? Like if they're good quality, right?
Exactly. I mean, $20 a year is what I spent on those boots.
Could you imagine like $20 for a pair of boots?
Exactly.
I can actually imagine because I buy a lot of my shoes at Walmart because I'm very hard on my shoes. So is Justin, and so we do buy really cheap shoes, but then they don't last.
Right.
At all.
and I mean, that's the trade-off you make. But if I had to get waterproof shoes because we finally got snow for the first time in 4 years, then I can go to Walmart and get a pair of boots for like $20.
Has it been 4 years?
Since we have anything on the ground, yeah. 4 or 5 years maybe. Anyways.
Coronavirus really killed the whole earth.
Apparently. But it's a hard thing. And so same way on shelter. Yeah. You're going to have to share a bedroom with somebody. You're going to have to have loud roommates, or you're going to have to
a roof.
But at least you have a roof.
Yeah.
And same way on vehicles.
Yeah.
It's going to be a used car. It's going to be it's just you got to lower, and again it comes down to your heart. Your relationship with money is what we really I don't know if we dove deep into it, but if somebody comes to me and they're like, I have so much debt. And if all we say is, well, here's all the methods you could use to pay off debt. Yeah. If they don't fix their heart and their relationship towards money, what I've seen, and this is very frustrating because I've had it happen 3 or 4 times. Yeah. And then I'll talk about some wins I've had also.
Yeah, do.
But I've helped people free of charge because we do debt counseling. We do, we'll help anybody who comes in our door.
Of course.
Figure it out. 3 or 4 times I helped people get out of debt. And as they were heading down that finish line, or Sports Reference, they were in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Okay, yeah.
They start looking up and being like, we just saw a boat.
Oh, no.
And now that we're out of they're back to, they lived frugally.
No, you're nailing it.
Say it.
Frugal?
Frugally.
I don't know.
If that's a word.
I think it's a word.
Okay.
It's a word today.
Yeah. They did it, but then they're like, yeah, you know what? We got to get back to, and they go right back to the same lifestyle that got them there.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating because it's like, well, what did we do? Well, what we didn't do at the outset was say, we got to get your relationship with money.
Right. So that's the relationship with money then. Is they just want to have all the bougie stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to me, money is just something to provide food, clothing, and shelter.
Right.
And you will always have to be willing to go back to a basic standard of living. Mm-hmm. And if you have that attitude, it seems like you're not chasing the big expensive things. Mm. And I just remember one of the things which was really, refreshing to me, because I don't know what I attracted before, but before I always seemed to be with materialistic people. And your mom was literally like, as long as I'm with you, I could live in a box.
Yep.
I could live on the beach. Like, you're my person.
Yeah.
And as long as you're there, I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of been the basis of things of, hey, if we have to go backwards, we're fine, because where our heart is with each other, with our family. We want to be there for there. We don't need big fancy things.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have your heart right, you're eventually going to end up in having, whatever they said, so much debt.
Yeah, right.
And
now, is it okay to have the fancy things though?
If you're not destroying your budget, like if you're going through all the things, and we haven't even talked about investing and things like that, but if you have
for a lot of questions when we do.
Yeah. And then we'll jump back to where we would start the person after we said, okay, fix your heart.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Then we would say, well, let's start budgeting, which I'll get to in a minute, because I did want to, those 3 or 4 things stick with me where they just went right back to, hey, we're going to just blow our money again.
Yeah.
I've had probably 7 or 8 wins.
Oh, the success stories.
Yeah, where they followed our advice to a T. They fixed their heart. They did a budget. They got out of debt. And then the final piece of that advice was, you keep taking what you were paying towards your debts, you keep the same budget, and now you start pouring money into your retirement savings, your long-term savings. By doing that same amount, I've had people who came to me at 45, 48 years old, $0 saved for retirement, all of a sudden able to retire at 60 or 62.
Wow.
Because if you think of how much debt you're, like, for most people, even like, you know, for a 24-year-old, I believe this person was, you know, a $500 a month debt payment.
Yeah.
By the time he's 62, if he was investing, that turns into like 2 point something million if he gets 7% returns.
Yep.
Which is actually less than the average for the stock market. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk.
You have fully gone.
That's the disclaimer, because we can't guarantee investments. But if you just save what you were doing, like, that's the success stories. Like, they came to me saying, just desperate, like, we're never going to be able to retire. I'm a manual laborer. My body's already breaking down.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let's first start about your heart. We gotta start from basics and say, money is a vehicle to provide food, clothing, and shelter, nothing else.
Yeah.
Then, going back to where we started episode 1, which again, I'd restructure it now.
Yeah.
Then we started talking about budgeting.
Yep.
And what's, to you, you grew up in a house of finance people.
Mm-hmm.
When I say the word budget, what's that trigger in you?
I don't know. I think like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, I remember like envelope system. Like, are you talking about like when I was learning to budget myself? Yeah, it was envelope system for sure.
And so for those who've never heard of the envelope system, how did you work it out?
It was great. I mean, so I did everything in cash, which is, I mean, okay. I'm now a mom and a wife, and I spend most of our money, right? Like I'm supposed to, not like I'm just not spending money. But so I'm kind of the one who's in charge of all of the shopping and stuff. And so, but my brain still works so well in the envelope system, which is basically like, if you think in cash, you have physical envelopes and you have, I'm not good with numbers, but we're going to say $50 for groceries for however long that'll last somebody.
A day.
Yeah, for real. I'm like, we spend a lot of money on food. But so you've got X amount of money for groceries, X amount of money for gas, for all of your different things, your budgets. I don't know another word for it.
Buckets, I call them.
Buckets, yeah. And then anytime you go to the grocery store, you're only taking out your groceries envelope, and that's what you pay with. You don't dip into the gas money or the fun money or anything else. And so then when that grocery budget's gone, you've got to make do with the food that you have, because there is no more grocery money. Same with gas. I guess you're not going for a drive that night. We're not
going
driving
across the ferry to just sightsee.
Yeah. And so that's what that's what the envelope system is, and that is still how my brain works today. Fully. I think so. We talked about apps that people use. Yeah,
episode 1 I thought, to me, was one of our best ones, and obviously we were just launching the podcast. Maybe we should have held that back. But yeah, you talked about your struggles.
Yeah.
As a non-math, what's the correct term? The woke term? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not
You're
good
not
with numbers.
math friendly.
I'm not math friendly at all. I'm street smart.
You're
right?
smart. Yeah. Which is funny, because you're like one of the smartest people I know. But I mean, I bet you if I asked you to add some numbers, you'd be like,
I'd be like,
which is cool. I mean, some people's
not,
brains, you're more artistic.
Yeah.
And studies have shown that artistic people have more, is it right brain? And their left brain is not connected.
Okay, yeah.
Like whatever synapses or whatever. So we found a way as numbers people, because your mom's very left-brained as well, to come up with a way that our artsy person could understand it. And so I was told, like in one of my classes, that budget is a trigger word for some people, because they feel like it's too restrictive. And if we say we're restricting you, then just like calling it a diet and not an eating plan.
Yep, that's fully, like, for me, diet's a trigger word for me.
Yeah, exactly. So I say budget just because to me it makes sense.
Yeah.
Spending plan is probably a better use of it.
Yeah.
Because your envelope system is your spending plan. And each envelope is divided out into, here's your here's your categories, is what the apps would call them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is where you spend the money.
Yeah.
So how did you and Dustin figure out how much you spend? Did you know, like, from day one of marriage, this is how much we're spending?
Absolutely not. Oh my goodness. There was a lot of trial and error there.
Yes.
Emphasis on the error.
Yeah. And,
No, I think it was absolutely trial and error. I think we individually, before we got together, we were like, okay, well, I'm roughly spending this much money on food. I'm roughly spending this much money on food. So we kind of, I don't want to say we just added those together because now we're eating together.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
But he's eating healthy.
He was eating
high
healthy
protein.
crap, all the meats and the proteins and the vegetables. I don't
And
even
not
know.
ramen.
And I was surviving on ramen and Chef Boyardee. But yeah, so
Trial and error.
it was a lot of trial and error.
And the main thing, so this is what I would tell this person in the comments was, okay, we worked on your heart, episode 3. How much money are you spending? Well, you don't know.
Right.
So for 1 month,
Oh yeah.
record everything, whether
Yeah.
it's an old school, write it down,
Yeah.
get an app.
Save your receipts.
Yeah, save your receipts. Cash, like
Yep.
divide it out and say, this is what I think I'm doing, but then divide that out. But you have to know for at least a month,
Yeah.
what do I spend money on? How much is food? How much is clothing? How much is shelter?
Oh, should we even talk about the fact that some people get paid so we get paid monthly.
Yeah.
And I remember when I used to get paid, before I got married, and now I get paid monthly because that's when Dustin gets paid. But I used to figure it out based on weeks, right? Like it was every week, every other week, something like that.
Yeah, every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. And so I remember trying to shift to monthly budgeting, and I remember that being bananas. And now I can't imagine trying to figure it out, going the opposite direction. But yeah, so I don't know.
I don't remember if we talked about it. Episode 1 was so long ago.
Yeah.
I guess 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But there's 2 strategies we've seen people use.
Okay.
The harder math strategy
Don't put me down for that one.
and this is only if you're consistently working the same amount of hours.
That's the other thing too, is I'm like, we've got people like Toby's girlfriend. She works, at the grocery
Sometimes
store, and
8 hours, sometimes 25 hours.
yeah.
And yeah. That's really hard to do.
That's rough.
That's where you have to be just religiously recording everything and saying, okay, well, I only worked 8 hours this week and I have my car insurance coming up. I need to throw that in that category, that bucket, that envelope.
Yeah.
For there. So that those people have to be very, very strict and disciplined to know what bills, food, clothing, shelter are coming up.
Yeah.
So that's really hard to deal with. And I believe this person who commented does not have a steady 40-hour, 35-hour a week job. So he deals with fluctuations of income.
That's so hard.
And so you just have to start and say, okay, every month I spend this. You could take that times 12. It's 12 months in a year.
Okay, I was like, where'd 12 come from?
Times 12.
Okay.
And then divide that by 52 because there's 52 weeks a year.
Thanks.
Or
I was like, sure, we're just throwing out
if you're paid twice a month, you could divide that by 26. I'm sorry, if you're paid bi-weekly.
Okay. Oh,
because
bi-weekly, yes.
52 divided by 2 is 26.
Yes.
So now you know every paycheck how much goes in each category.
Oh, that's smart.
So
you should do this for a living.
Thanks. And we actually, and maybe Courtney in the show notes, what'smyscore.net, we have some budgeting tools, and in there is a calculator, a spreadsheet, and it works on the online version of Excel, so you don't have to have Excel on your computer.
Oh, nice.
For all you non-computer people.
Yep. My people.
Which, by the way, that totally blows me away. Like, the twins always, they've only worked on Chromebooks. And so they get on a real computer and they're like,
a real computer? Do you mean like a Windows?
Like a Windows computer. Okay. It's like me getting on a Mac. And
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, for me, that's a Mac is my real computer.
But we have a spreadsheet where they can put in right down to how much you make per hour, how many hours per week.
Oh, nice.
And then you can start
that's
putting
a great
in
tool. Dang. That really
all
is.
for free.
That's awesome.
But those calculators on there allow you to do the math I just did.
Wow.
So this person has to deal with, okay, I'm paid every other week. I don't have consistent hours. But the first step is recording everything food, clothing, shelter that you have to pay for.
Yep.
And then what he'll have to get to, which will jump back to episode 3, is paying down that debt.
Right.
You know, obviously, the minimum you have to make whatever the minimum payments are. So that is included in this.
Food, shelter, clothing, debt.
Yeah, your minimum payments on
Minimum
debt.
payments. Okay.
Writing all that down, figuring out how much per paycheck you need to set aside.
Okay.
And this is where we like either the real envelope system with cash.
Yeah.
And we talked about, I believe in episode 1, debit card, the prepaid debit cards.
Yeah.
If you don't want cash sitting around, at least you can put debit cards, or people will do gift cards in their envelopes.
Yeah. That's so tricky. Side story real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Corinne's current struggle is my personal spending budget. I'm so bad about, sometimes I spend money in cash because I just happen to have cash, right? Sometimes I spend that money electronically, right? And it's tricky to keep up with it, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's also tricky if it's like, oh, I'll put that in my app later. Unless that money came from cash. But then, like, how am I supposed to? I don't have an electronic receipt, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to come in the bank. What's the word?
Transactions.
Yes, thank you. And so, anyway, Justin and I are trying to figure out a way, whether it is a gift card type thing or the debit card thing. We're trying to figure out how in the heck we're going to. I just want I told Dustin, I was like, just give me cash. Just give me cash. Give me
in your envelope.
In my envelope. That way, that's Corinne's money.
We could get your cool little lockbox that you pick up on your shelf.
Exactly. And I do like the idea of it, but there really are certain things where it's like, well, what if I want to buy something on Amazon with my spending money? Amazon does not accept my cash. And so, yeah, just trying to find that balance. It can be really tricky, is all I'm trying to say.
It is, yeah. And, you know, we used to have to, like, take the cash out and then immediately from the ATM, or, you know, I see people do cash back. Well, that might be entertainment money, but then they see it come out at the grocery store and they're like, well, that was just food.
It was just food, yeah.
Doesn't count.
Yeah.
Which is, I think Toby said, you know, cash doesn't count. Like, well, it does count.
Unfortunately.
It came out of somebody's bank account somewhere. But yeah, that's the hard thing. But the primary thing is record everything for a month. Figure out how much per paycheck that's going to cost so that you know. And I'm old school where I don't mind, like, go to Office Max or Staples or whatever they're called now and buy some of those ledger books.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
that way, to me, you're physically writing it down rather than putting it in an app. And then you're saying, okay, I needed $500 this month, which per paycheck is maybe, you know, $125. You need to be able to write down where's all my money coming from and add that up. And that's where the spreadsheet comes in, is it will do the columns for you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't know who's going to spend the time writing that all out. Dad, let me be so real. I would not do that. I would so not do that.
But that's my brain, is I have to see it.
But you could do, like, same thing, right, with, like, Google Sheets or
totally
the Mac thing that does spreadsheets. I don't know, I usually just do Google Sheets.
Yeah.
But or Excel, yeah.
Yeah. Any sort of thing that can put in a column. It could be a note on your phone.
Oh yeah.
But you have to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Of where am I saving per paycheck, because you can't just keep going how you were going to get out of debt.
Yeah.
From there, once you finally know where you're at, we go jump back to episode 3. And then that was, how do we get out of debt?
Yeah.
This is where you start saying, okay, my minimum payment will just say, for this person, I believe he said $500 a month, just minimum payments.
Oof.
Now, thankfully, on credit card statements, they put on there, sometimes I like government regulations, and this is one. I was like, if you only make the minimum payment, it's going to take you 14 years to pay off this debt.
Oh my goodness.
You know, so that's where you got to say, well, okay, can I find $25 extra out of my categories to then put towards my debt payments?
Yeah.
And so that was part of it. You check your heart, needs versus wants.
Yep.
I'm sorry, episode 5 was getting out of debt. Maybe I am jumping around. Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know.
Who needs an outline?
So we'll put it.
Yeah,
Post will do
episode
it.
5 was
Post
getting
will do
it.
it.
Yeah, post. We always joke Courtney can do it in post.
Courtney can do it in post.
Because Dustin, our
she
IT
said,
person,
I cannot do it in post.
is like all techie, and
Yeah.
he's like trying to use jargon.
I know.
Like post.
Yeah, I know. He's so silly.
So now everything will be fixed in post.
Everything's fixed in post.
Because that means we don't have to do it.
Exactly. So, Courtney, if we got any of those episode numbers wrong, just edit it and
Yeah,
on the
just
screen.
change our,
Just do a little,
like put a little bubble.
just like
He
a
say
little bubble.
he meant episode 5 was dead.
Everyone, she really loves this
She's
idea. She's
glaring at
fully on
us.
board. No,
We
she's
need
not
a-
really not glaring.
We need to tell Dustin to have a reverse camera.
We need it back
So we could
behind the
get, she's like our
scenes.
producer like they
She's
do on
sitting
podcasts.
right there.
Like, I so badly want to just turn
I
that
know.
camera.
Can we just get a Courtney camera?
But then she'd probably take it out in
Scrub
post.
my eye. She would totally remove it in post. She's now agreeing to the post.
All right, so episode 5 was getting out of debt.
Okay.
And if you're in debt, definitely go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
But if you're in debt, episode 3, needs versus wants, heart.
Yeah.
Work on budgeting. Step 1 is just figuring out where all your money goes. And then going back to episode 5, which is finding areas where you can increase
Right.
where you're at.
Yeah.
But then I do have to look at my notes here.
Take your time,
Episode
Dad.
4
We haven't talked about that one. What's that
was
one?
expected expenses.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. That's like, yeah.
So, but these are the hard ones, remember?
Those ones are very hard.
Thankfully, most car insurance companies now let you pay monthly.
Oh, nice.
Back in the olden days, in the 20th century, you would get a bill either once a quarter, so every 3 months, or once every 6 months.
That's bananas.
You would get that bill and be like,
Bananas.
we owe how much in insurance?
Oh my goodness.
And
I'm
then
stressed
guess
thinking
who's
about
going
it.
into debt that month?
Yeah, for real.
Courtney.
Yeah, for real. Courtney's going into debt?
No,
Courtney's not
Courtney's
going in.
never been in debt.
I was going to say, I was like, we're talking about different people.
Yeah. But I mean, thankfully, neither of you, because, well, besides being in
Yeah.
debt to your parents.
I was going to say, the bank of mom and
Yeah.
dad. We
trying
had
to
a
teach
ledger
you
when I was younger.
Yeah, trying to teach you how bad debt was.
Yeah.
Because we
We
would
did.
say, if you want it, you can borrow money, but that just means if we're out somewhere else
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have money, everybody else will be spending money and you won't.
We have another episode idea, and that's going to be money or budgeting or whatever with ADHD.
Oh my God.
No, so for real though,
Yeah.
because I was undiagnosed growing up. That you didn't know this. I didn't know this. Nobody knew this. But we were working with a very different brain than a neurotypical person, and it is absolutely a factor. Because, for example, you say you can borrow this money now and pay it back later, or that means you won't get to buy anything else later. This ADHD brain says that is none of my business.
Yeah.
The future problem is none of my business. Yes, I want the thing right now.
Well,
Give me that
that's probably-
dopamine
yeah.
right now.
Which it is some ADHD, but it's also probably 70% of Americans.
Yeah.
Going back to, not saying that you didn't have the right heart,
No, yeah.
but understanding like, I got to look past today,
It's
which
hard.
ADHD brains don't,
Right.
and doing that. So definitely from there. Now, my ADHD is like totally lost.
Sorry.
And I'm probably more ADD. I'm not that hyper, but
Dad, we're going to have to talk about that lingo later then, because...
I'm in that ad.
Dad. No, like the hyperactivity can be like external or internal, which is why a lot of girls are like internal hype, which is it's all in your brain. So my
Okay.
brain's going 1,000 miles an hour.
And this
Sorry,
was psychological
this is-
talk with
Oh, I know.
Corinne.
Oh my goodness, new podcast. I would love that. I love talking
Yeah.
all about the mental stuff.
Which this
Let
is
us know in
also
the comments
mental.
if you're interested.
Yeah, right.
But no, actually, money stuff
This is very mental,
very
and,
mental.
and part of the ADHD budgeting was our trying to figure out us to have ways. But
Yeah.
you have never been in debt to outside banks.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
Other than your mortgage.
Yeah.
And then I believe maybe a car payment from
I think-
Dustin, and then all his stuff,
Listen, these
because
are
he did not
Dustin's
grow
stats,
up
no.
in a finance household.
No, he didn't.
And so that stuff.
To be so clear, because I feel like you're making me out to be like this super money person, I would have fully gotten myself in debt had I not lived with you and then immediately lived with Dustin. So that was just a sweet
Yeah.
deal that I ended up with. But
Yeah, and I think we might have talked about it before, but when you graduated high school and we made you pay rent,
Oh yeah.
and we were just taking, because of course you paid us in cash because
Yep, that's what I had.
you were cash envelopes. Tell everybody what we actually did with your rent money when we were tired of giving you rides everywhere.
You sneaky buttheads. You guys were saving all my rent money, right? And then I think you gave it to me and you were like, here's your rent money, go buy a car.
And you're like,
I was like, you've had this money this whole time. All of the ramen I have been,
Yeah.
all of the times I
Yeah.
could have been going out to get, Pizza Hut or whatever.
Because we knew you wouldn't save money.
I totally would not have.
And so our lesson was, look how much 125 a month? I forget what we charged you.
It's been many moons.
Look how quickly that added up into paying cash for a car.
Yeah, and then I did. What was it, like $2,000 I think?
$3,500.
We said the same number for sure.
Because I remember you said to poor Dustin, who you were dating at the time, said, I have like $3,500. We're coming home with a car today. He goes, no,
that's not how we can do this, Corinne. And I was like,
but it was your ADHD brain of like, I got money. Let's go buy a car.
Let's go. And I did. And Dad?
Dustin picked the worst car possible.
That Dustin, it was me. It was all me, guys. Yeah. But it was okay. And it was an example of you can get a crappy car as long as it can get you from point A to point B. Even if there's a pit stop because your car stops working in the middle of the road
because
and your mom
the person
has to push you home.
hid how the shifter
the person
cable
I
was,
bought it from.
Was frayed.
This is a whole separate story, but short
is
version of it.
Is Craigslist still a thing? Because I think that's where you found it.
I don't know. Actually, I think it is.
Okay.
Dustin has a bunch of old textbooks.
It's like the 20th century Facebook Marketplace.
I mean, it really is. Dad, that's a solid example or explanation of it.
Yeah.
So I went out and I found there was this like Saturn something. I don't even know. Dustin would know.
They don't even make them anymore.
They don't exist.
Saturn S? Anyways.
You could say anything and I would agree.
Okay.
I'd say, yep, it was that one. So it was some sort of like Saturn. It was like a stick shift. Corinne did not know how to drive a stick shift. And I go and I was like, yep, that's a car that can drive. So I will learn how to drive it. And then, and we did. We bought the car. We paid the guy.
And you nailed learning to drive it.
I literally learned it like that afternoon. I drove it home. And then the next day I had to go to work. So I drove it to work, and about halfway to work or something like that, I was like, I can't get it into first gear. And so I'm calling Dustin and I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing it wrong. Yeah. Like, it's clutch, then gear, right? And he was like, you're doing it right. And so anyway, it turns out that the cables for the shifter, Dad, explain it.
Yeah, so the shifter cable had been fraying, so the guy cut off all the frays.
Yeah.
So then as you shifted it, I'm not going to do that motion.
No.
It refrayed.
Yeah.
So it could not get back in gear. So then Dustin couldn't get away from work. I was out of town.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how legal this was, but your mom and our SUV pushed you back to our house.
Yeah, no, because I was stuck in neutral. And so I was just like, I'll steer and I can brake. Push us home, girl.
And then Dustin and I got some bonding time.
Yeah, you did.
Replacing the shifter cable on the car that he picked.
Yeah, that Dustin. Ugh.
But anyway, my point was there are methods for short-term focused people.
Yeah. To
save money, and ours was a tricky way.
Yes, it was.
But
very sneaky, tricky.
Getting my brain back on track, which is why I have notes. So we would check our heart.
Flying by the seat of my pants.
Yeah. Check our heart, episode 3.
Yes.
Needs versus wants, also episode 3.
Yes.
Go back to writing down, recording everything you're spending for a month, figuring how much per paycheck that is, and then going to episode 5, which was debt.
Yeah.
And figuring out for this person, first of all, you're doing a spending plan, because you cannot add any more debt.
Yeah. Get
rid of your credit cards.
Yeah.
Stop borrowing money for anything. Now I've noticed, like, you go to buy something and they're like, you can do, like, PayPal will do, like, pay it in 4 easy payments.
Oh, yeah.
And so now you have to vow.
That sounds like such a sweet deal.
And they're like, no interest as long as you pay it off in 4 months. But if you don't pay it off, it's 25% interest.
Yeah, yeah.
And then now you're in debt again.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have the money, you cannot buy it until you're out of debt. Yeah. And even then, and that's where episode 4 comes in. And this is not for this person who asked the question, because we are probably 3 to 5 years out from being out of debt, which is fine.
Yep.
Because we go back to needs versus wants, our heart.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need it. As long as I have food, clothing, and shelter, and I'm healthy, I can live on that. I'm not comparing myself to others. I'm just providing that.
Yeah.
So then we get out of the debt by finding ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that budget is also the expected, like that's what we were talking about, car payments.
Oh yeah,
car insurance. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are things like in Virginia, every county I think you only get your property tax for your car once a year, which is similar to your license plate tags in other states where you're paying your taxes and your fees. So you have to know that. Like, I know I'm going to have to spend maybe slightly less than I did last year, because the way they do property taxes is every year it's worth a little bit less. So you pay less in taxes. But in general, so take what you paid last year for all these things that aren't a monthly expense, but they're paid at some point during the year, and divide that back out by your number of paychecks.
Right.
So that's kind of the things we talked about. Other expected things, we just got through Christmas and Thanksgiving. For this person...
Dad, when is Christmas falling this
year?
Oh,
wait. 2025 Christmas is December 25th.
Got it. Now I can prepare for it.
Yeah. Thanksgiving is the fourth Thursday of November.
Is that what it's landing on this year?
It is this year. This year it's the fourth Thursday. I don't know about 2026.
We'll have to look ahead, yeah.
Parents and siblings' birthdays are coming up. But for this person, again, back to needs versus wants in your heart, you do not have to buy presents.
Oh, yeah. That was like such an eye-opening experience. I remember when the idea of just like making them something or spending time with them as their gift.
And we
else.
joke about like gift certificates.
But like those are legit.
But if it was okay when you were 6 and your mom loved it, don't you think at 26 your mom would love a gift certificate of, hey, movie night with me, son.
Yep. 100%.
I'll come over and watch a movie at your house, Mom.
Yeah.
Moms would melt.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, honestly, even a friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, bestie, let's get together and watch our favorite movie together.
Yeah, whether your love language is quality time or acts of service or anything, you're...
come and mow your lawn.
You're doing something that's not costing you money.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even dollar store gift. Like, do something creative.
Yeah.
For those, who aren't deeply in debt, you can plan for holidays. But while you're getting in debt, just say, look, just put yourself out there. That's free.
Yep.
So that's what we talked about in, I guess it was episode 4, was the expected expenses.
Okay.
So if you have to have a car to work in most places, because there's not very good public transportation, including even where we lived in Tucson.
There really wasn't.
We would have to drive you to the bus stop.
Yep.
Because you weren't walking 2 miles in the 105-degree weather.
Sure was.
So you can't just, people will take public transportation, bum rides off of people. That's not feasible.
That's really
you worked
not.
at Starbucks at 4:30 a.m.
Yeah. Believe it or not, nobody else except for you guys were willing to drive me.
So that's expected expenses. Figure what those are. Then what we have to work into this spending plan is the unexpected, because the worst thing you can do is have a surprise pop up and then all of a sudden you're tempted to go back on credit cards.
Oh yeah, big time.
And so those things, that's, people call it an emergency fund, a rainy day fund.
Yep.
I call it a life fund, because we talked about in episode 2. Oh, we really jumped around.
We really did.
ADHD brain helping us organize.
We're trying to do something. Yeah.
Episode 2 was unexpected expenses. It is very necessary. So maybe before you find that extra $25 or $50 to pay down your debt, try to get $500, if not $1,000, in an emergency fund that's not so easy to get to, like a separate online bank account or something.
Yeah, it can't just be right there with all your money.
Or somewhere harder to get.
Yeah.
So that if you do have to go to urgent care, and that's not part of your spending plan, you dip into that and say, okay, this $100 copay, which seems like it is anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, it's after 9 p.m. That means it's an after-hour surcharge.
I know, right?
That $100 doesn't derail your normal spending. And then you immediately try to replenish that. So really listen to episode 2 on the unexpected expenses, because that's how not only do you get back into debt if you're this person we're trying to help, but you also, if you're doing well, can throw you off and have you tempted to get into debt.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So that's kind of the synopsis. So
yeah, I was going to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it, but there is also, we talked briefly about when debt can be good.
Yeah, we'll do it briefly. We would not tell this person that.
For sure. If you're already in debt, then it's probably not the good debt.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb on debt is it should be put into something that you have a pretty good chance of whatever you're using the debt for to be worth something higher in value.
To get out of the debt.
To get out of it.
Yeah.
So that, and the easiest example is your mortgage, that other than the financial crisis, your house should be worth more when you go to sell it, which means you made money on that debt.
Yeah.
Your car almost never will be. Although your brothers will try to convince me that, hey, they're not making this model anymore. It's going to be worth more. I'm like, buddy, you don't understand how cars work.
Yeah.
You can buy like...
What's the saying where it's like you lose this much % of something or
Oh
another
gosh,
as you
it's
drive
like
off
10
the lot.
or 15%.
Yeah. Immediately. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so this person would not, like this person needs to have no debt.
This
like
person
no
and
new
people
debt.
like them.
Yeah, anybody who's deeply in debt.
Yeah.
If you have, and this is where helping the success stories.
Yeah.
If you go into retirement and you have no debt, including your mortgage, even for people your age, I'm pretty confident that Social Security would cover food, clothing, and shelter.
Okay.
Because think about it, your house would be paid off.
Yep.
You wouldn't be paying car payments. If your budget was just food, clothing, and shelter, that's less than $2,000 a month for most people.
I believe you.
That would be, I'm confident Social Security will be there even when you guys go to retire.
Nice.
It's not going to be enough to cover food, clothing, and shelter and boat payments and 7 vacations a year.
Eesh.
That's the difference. And we do need to talk about investments at some point in one of these coming episodes. But for this person, maybe, I don't even know how much time we have. Good thing there's no clock in here, right?
It's behind you.
Should we wrap it up, Courtney? All right. So
yep, we're wrapping it up.
So 60 to 90 seconds for social media.
Boom, boom, boom.
Because this is how everybody's brains think.
Amen.
Okay. So you come to me and say, I have so much debt.
I'm so in debt.
I'm going to say, okay, go to episode 3. We got to look at your heart. We got to determine what are needs, what are wants. Your only focus can be on needs. Okay. And we got to make that the bare minimum, food, clothing, and shelter. You got to understand you're not going to go chasing people's vision of you. You're going to just focus on you.
Yep.
And then you're going to do a spending plan. You're going to that's episode 1. You're going to cover everything that you're spending money on. Figure out how often you're paid. Get that down to a point of this is how much I need to save per paycheck for these. And then you're going to go to expected expenses, car insurance, other things. Holidays, you're not going to do Christmas presents that cost money.
Nope.
You're going to do them in gifts of acts of service.
Yep.
Then you're going to talk about unexpected expenses, which is episode 2.
Yes.
Find an emergency plan, emergency fund. After you do that, you're going to get that emergency fund going, $500 to $1,000. Then you're going to find extra money to start paying down your debt faster than the minimum payments. And then we can go talk about the rest of the things because you'll be out of debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not that easy. It's going to take discipline. It could
hard.
take 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
But you're going towards the end goal. It is doable.
Yeah.
I think that's episode 6. Comment, hit the link if you have other episode ideas.
Yeah.
If you want us to answer a question, I'm not opposed to doing a whole episode on people's questions.
Absolutely not. That'd be super fun.
Not sure how long it was, but I think we nailed it.
Episode 6.
Nice.